Hi guys, Kylie Feller here. So this video is a brief introduction to what attachment theory is and what attachment styles are and why they matter to you. So I originally learned about attachment theory a long time ago, and I really wasn't that excited about it. I really didn't understand how that impacted me later in my life until I read this book called Attached. And it's by Amir Levine, The Science of Adult Attachment and How It Can Help You Find and Keep Love. So a long time ago, in like 1960s, there was a researcher, John Bowlby, who had a theory that, we are wired to be attached to our primary caregivers. And when we have a secure base, when our needs are consistently met, we're actually more independent in life. We are more secure. And so when we don't have that secure attachment to our parents growing up, that's where we kind of get the insecure attachment styles: avoidant, anxious, and disorganized. So this kind of research was further looked at by a researcher named Mary Ainsworth. Now, she did these experiments called the strange situation. She took an infant and a mother, and they had them in a strange room. There was toys, all this kind of stuff, and what they wanted to do was they had the mothers leave the baby in the room by itself, and what they wanted to look at was the infant's reaction when the mother returned into the room. Now, for a secure child, when the mom comes back into the room, they easily kind of calm down. They can easily go back to playing. Everything is pretty good. They're secure. They trust their mom's going to come back. They're not going to leave again. They've got that independence. Now, the second type, anxious, mom comes back into the room. Baby won't calm down. The infant is yelling, crying, clinging to the parent, won't go back and play with the toys, is very fearful that the mom's going to leave again, doesn't trust, right? The third is the avoidant. So mom comes back into the room and the baby's kind of upset, kind of angry, right? Doesn't really want to be comforted by the parent. And then the fourth is called disorganized, and that one was developed a little bit later, and that's when the mom returns into the room. The infant has just really odd behaviors. Maybe they come, maybe they go, maybe they lie on the floor, just very disorganized, just a very odd reaction. And that's kind of more, that one is very much linked, they found, to kind of trauma in childhood, so more kind of severe neglect or abuse. And originally, they really blamed the parents for these attachments, right? So if a child had an insecure attachment, it was blamed on the primary caretakers. And it's partially true, but there's also a lot of factors that go into what kind of attachment style somebody will have. So your temperament as a child, say your birth was really hard, like the cord gets wrapped around your neck or something like that's kind of a trauma, and that can actually sever the relationship and the bonding to the mother. If your mom has postpartum depression, if as a baby you're sick and you're premature or something happens, you have to be put in an incubator or separated. Back in the day too, for people that are a bit older, it was common for parents to be told to not coddle their babies, to let them cry it out, right? Different cultures can have a different impact on one's attachment style. So it's not really just the parents' fault, but for sure if your parents had mental health, if they struggled from anxiety or depression, from emotional expression, intergenerational trauma, lots of stuff, right? Substance abuse in the home. So it's your parents could have, you look back and all of your needs were met, but maybe there was that emotional intimacy piece that was missing. And the thing is, when you're younger, to get a secure attachment, you need your parents to attune to you. So attunement means that somebody is mirroring what you're feeling, right? It's okay. So as a child, you might get upset, you might scream. You want your parent to be able to mirror that. And for parents to be able to mirror what you're feeling, they have to be comfortable with feeling. And as an adult hearing this, you might know that a lot of people struggle with emotions and emotional processing, such as like anger or sadness or pain or even joy and happiness. That can make some people feel uncomfortable. I've worked with some parents, and having a child was a huge a huge healing opportunity, right? So it's very difficult because, them as children, they grew up in, a different culture where children were not encouraged to shine, to be seen and not heard. So, when they were too loud, too excited, too joyful, that was like, oh no, hold that down, right? And then they learn that who they are isn't good enough, right? This isn't okay. I'm being told to not be who I really am. And that causes a lot of pain. And it's similar for all of us. At some point we find out who we are isn't good enough. And that really touches into another theory I will talk about, internal family systems. But coming back into attachment, what happens for an insecure attachment is the child determines that their needs are not being met. Right? So it can be very subtle, which can be very hard to look back on your childhood and be able to see that. Or sometimes it's quite obvious. You can tell that your parents are really not there. And there was some neglect or just some mental health stuff that was going on in the home, or up to abuse, right? So what happens to the child is, for an anxious, what happens is my needs aren't being consistently met. So it's almost like their cry gets turned on. So even when their needs are being met, they're not sure when they'll happen again. So there's like that clinging, that distrust. And as an adult, that continues, right? So there's this model about the world that the people who I love may not be there. They may not always meet my needs. And you become very dependent in such a way that you've lost your self-regulation, right? And you almost sometimes can't even co-regulate because you're so scared they're going to be leaving. So when you're anxious, you can notice that there's like that distrust. Sometimes you always put your needs of others above your own. You're very compassionate towards others, but it's hard for yourself. It's a very external kind of looking. There's a lot of turmoil, a lot of uncomfortableness in the body. But with an anxious, you're always seeking emotional intimacy. You really want that closeness. You really want that security, yet you never can feel it. And that'll tie into the piece where an anxious and avoidant, they're very attracted to each other, which kind of sucks because they reconfirm each other's beliefs about the world. So coming into an avoidant, what happens to that same situation, they feel like their needs aren't being consistently met. And so what they do instead of that cry being turned on is they turn it off. So they become very independent, self-sufficient little adults, right? Kind of turn those emotions right down, turn their needs right down. And they've learned that, my needs will be met, so I'm going to meet them on my own. But it's not a true self-regulation. It's a very kind of fearful of connecting or allowing somebody else to regulate with them. And with avoidance, sometimes you're not even quite aware of it, but maybe you get into an argument and you notice there's some deep intimacy and there's like a pushback, We call them deactivating strategies. So your brain might get flooded with everything that you don't like about your partner, everything that they've done wrong, just completely blank. Brain might just shut down, right? And not be able to engage or have a conversation, just complete like freeze, right? So that can be really difficult, especially when you have, there's this like magnet between anxious and avoidance, and it causes a quite difficult relationship. And that's why it's really amazing when you know attachment, if you are in a position where you're single, to choose somebody that isn't super avoidant if you're anxious, right? Or if you're avoidant, to choose somebody who's really anxious. So there's this back and forth, and you can really start to recognize it in people, just how they communicate. And all of us have secure in us too, right? So we believe that the world is trustworthy. We believe in our needs, our boundaries, all that kind of stuff. Now, if you have an insecure attachment and you date somebody who's secure, you're more likely to become more secure, right? So, and the other things can happen too. Sometimes you're secure and you date somebody who's anxious or avoidant. It can make you the opposite of what they're kind of going into. So you'll never have like two avoidants date each other because they'll just never put the work in together. And two anxious could, but it might just be too much. They might just keep missing each other. So it's really important to understand your attachment, because what can happen, and the people's around you, is you can work to create an earned secure attachment, right? So there's a number of different variables that are connected to a secure attachment that you can start to work on. And that's something that I lay out in my course, the Swipe Right into Loving Yourself. You can do this in a relationship, or you can do it while you're single. Either is fine. There is a really great book called Power of Attachment that also really works at creating that secure attachment, kind of rewriting some of your earlier moments in life, that self-regulation. And a lot of it just with attachment is once you can see the system, like once I read this book Attached and I could kind of separate the attachment system in me from my own voice. So sometimes there's like, I am more prone to being a bit anxious sometimes. So there'll be like this voice like, oh, they don't like you, or, sometimes with anxious too, it's like those you want to text over and over again, or you're scared something's happened. It's like that pull and it like hijacks you, right? So if you can see it, you're like, whoa, my attachment system was just activated. I need to do some breathing. I need to connect into myself. I need to say everything's okay. And that's that internal family systems talks about this, but becoming your own primary caretaker, right? So understanding your parts. When there's that attachment wound, it often needs healing. And it'll tell you that somebody else is going to heal it, but really you're the one that needs to heal your internal system. And to do that, we have to become more aware and mindful of what's going on inside of us. So that's kind of a little bit about attachment. There's some really great books out there. I'm going to link in an attachment quiz, so feel free to take that. And again, these categories aren't like black and white categories. Sometimes we resonate a little bit in all of them, and depending on the situation we're in, different ones can get activated. And there's just different things that you can do in your relationship that will help counter if there is an underlying attachment wound that's kind of being activated. So this is really great stuff. I think everybody should have to know about this. It really just blew my mind. It makes relationships so much easier. It makes relating to yourself and understanding yourself so much better. So if you have any questions, I will be doing more videos kind of pinpointing these different attachments for you guys just to help you identify them a bit more. Thanks so much for your time.